Some apes, it seems, are more equal than others.
Why do men have no souls? What is the proof that a divine spark exists in the simian brain?
Security police.
I'm in charge of this man.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Imagine a man crawls desperately across hot sand, his throat parched, his uniform in tatters. Behind him, armed guerrillas on horseback charge forward with nets and rifles. The year is 1968, and audiences are witnessing something unprecedented. A Hollywood film where humans are the animals and apes are the masters of Earth. This haunting role reversal would become one of cinema's most powerful social mirrors. The late 1960s were a time of profound social upheaval. As the Vietnam War raged and the Civil Rights Movement challenged America's conscience, Hollywood was struggling to stay relevant. Science fiction, long relegated to B-movie status with rubber monsters and flying saucers, was about to evolve into something far more provocative. Enter producer Arthur P. Jacobs, who saw in Pierre Boulle's 1963 novel La Planète des Singes an opportunity to craft something revolutionary. What's particularly remarkable about Planet of the Apes is that it succeeded despite significant industry skepticism. With a budget of $5.8 million, modest even by 1968 standards, the film went on to generate $33.4 million at the box office, proving that audiences were ready for science fiction that made them think as much as it made them gasp. But Planet of the Apes did more than just make money. It demonstrated that genre films could serve as powerful vehicles for social commentary. Through its inverse world where apes dominated humans, the film held up a mirror to our own society's prejudices, power structures, and painful history of oppression. In an era when racial tensions were at their peak, the film's allegory about discrimination and civil rights couldn't have been more timely. The project was initially met with resistance from studio executives who worried that audiences wouldn't take talking apes seriously. Yet this very concern pushed the production team to strive for unprecedented realism in their approach. They weren't making just another monster movie. They were crafting a serious drama that happened to star highly evolved primates. This commitment to treating the premise with absolute sincerity would prove crucial to the film's enduring impact. The stage was set for a science fiction film unlike anything that had come before, one that would challenge audiences' expectations and force them to confront uncomfortable truths about their own society. Through the lens of this simian society, viewers would be compelled to examine the very nature of humanity itself. You know that scene where Charlton Heston first sees the apes on horseback? It's absolutely wild. The camera slowly pans up from the cornfield, and suddenly, boom, there they are. Gorillas charging through on horses, nets flying, humans scattering like scared animals. The first time I saw it, my jaw dropped. And that's exactly what Planet of the Apes was all about. Taking your expectations and turning them completely upside down. But let's talk about how they pulled this off, because it's honestly mind-blowing. The makeup effects by John Chambers, revolutionary doesn't even begin to cover it. Before this movie, prosthetic makeup meant rubber masks and stiff faces. Chambers created something entirely different. Each ape actor had to sit in the makeup chair for 3 to 4 hours every single morning. We're talking detailed prosthetics that could actually move with the actors' faces. The actors could smile, frown, raise their eyebrows. Everything a human face could do. The film's visual style is something else, too. The cinematographer, Leon Shamroy, used these amazing wide shots of the Forbidden Zone, actually filmed in Arizona, to create this sense of isolation and alienation. The heat was brutal during filming, by the way. Imagine wearing all that ape makeup in the desert sun. But that discomfort actually added to the performances. You can feel the tension in every scene. And then there's Jerry Goldsmith's score. It's not your typical Hollywood orchestra. He used mixing bowls, ram's horns, and all kinds of weird percussion to create this unsettling, alien soundscape. Every time you hear those strange sounds, it reminds you that you're in a world that's familiar but completely wrong at the same time. One of the coolest technical achievements was how they handled the Apes movements. The actors playing Apes had to learn specific ways of moving their heads, their hands, even how they walked. They brought in animal behaviorists to get it right, and it shows. Watch how Roddy McDowall moves as Cornelius. It's not just a guy in an ape suit. He becomes this whole other species. The production faced some crazy challenges too. The ape costumes would literally fall apart in the heat. They had to keep rebuilding them between takes. And filming the horse riding scenes? That was a nightmare. Try getting a horse to stay calm when its rider is dressed as a gorilla. But all these challenges forced the team to be creative, and that's what made the movie so special. What really gets me is how seamless everything looks, even today. Sure, modern CGI can do amazing things, but there's something about the practical effects in Planet of the Apes that just feels more real. When you're watching it, you're not thinking about the technical stuff. You're completely absorbed in this upside-down world they've created. Let's talk about the performances that made Planet of the Apes unforgettable, starting with Charlton Heston as Taylor. Here's a guy known for playing larger-than-life heroes like Moses, but in this film, he's stripped of everything. His dignity, his voice, even his clothes. The way he portrays Taylor's transformation from confident astronaut to caged human is just incredible. There's this raw desperation in his eyes when he finally shouts, "Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape." It's not just angry, it's the cry of someone who's lost their place in the world. Roddy McDowall as Cornelius? Pure genius. He had the toughest job, making us believe in a sympathetic ape scientist under all that makeup. The way he moves, the little head tilts, the gentle mannerisms, he created this whole character that feels so real. Fun fact, McDowall spent weeks studying ape movements before filming even started. He would practice in front of a mirror for hours, getting every gesture just right. Then there's Kim Hunter as Zira. Man, what a performance. She brings this wonderful warmth and humor to her role. There's this scene where she's examining Taylor, and you can see this mixture of scientific curiosity and genuine compassion in her eyes, even through all that makeup. The chemistry between her and McDowall feels so natural, you actually forget you're watching actors in ape costumes. Maurice Evans as Dr. Zaius deserves special mention. He could have played him as a straight-up villain, but instead, he gives us this complex character who truly believes he's protecting his society. That scene where he warns Taylor about mankind's true nature? Chilling. Because deep down, you know he's got a point. The film's most powerful scenes often come when these performances collide. Take the trial sequence. It's like a powder keg of tension. You've got Taylor, desperate to prove his intelligence, Zira and Cornelius risking everything to defend him, and Zaius trying to maintain the status quo. The way these characters bounce off each other creates this perfect storm of drama. But here's something people often overlook. The mute humans in the film. They don't have any lines, but their presence is haunting. The way they move, their blank stares, their submission to the apes, it all adds to this feeling of humanity lost. Linda Harrison, who played Nova, had to convey everything through her eyes and body language. Try acting without words sometime. It's incredibly difficult. What's fascinating is how some of these roles almost went to different actors. Edward G. Robinson was originally cast as Dr. Zaius and even did makeup tests, but the prosthetics were too uncomfortable for him. Sometimes the perfect cast comes together through happy accidents like that. All these performances work together to hit you with the film's themes: prejudice, power, scientific responsibility, faith versus reason. It's not just actors and makeup, it's a mirror showing us our own humanity or lack of it. And that's what makes these performances timeless. They're not just telling a story about apes ruling Earth. They're telling our story, When Planet of the Apes first hit theaters in 1968, it got some pretty wild reactions. Critics didn't know quite what to make of it. Here's the funny thing. Some serious film critics dismissed it as just another sci-fi flick with people in monkey suits, while others immediately got what it was trying to do. Variety called it an amazing film. The New York Times wasn't so sure, wondering if audiences would buy into the whole concept. But here's where it gets interesting. The film started this slow burn in people's minds. Sure, everyone was blown away by that ending. You know, the Statue of Liberty scene that's become one of the most famous twists in movie history. But as people started really thinking about it, they began seeing all these layers they missed the first time around. Let me share some fascinating behind-the-scenes stuff that changed how people saw the film. Rod Serling, yeah, the Twilight Zone guy, wrote the first few drafts of the script. He's actually the one who came up with that iconic ending. The original novel had a completely different finale. And get this, they almost went with a much lower budget version where the apes would wear simple masks and live in modern cities. Thank goodness they didn't. There was this whole controversy about the religious parallels too. Some people were pretty upset about how the film portrayed the ape society's beliefs, especially with Dr. Zaius as this religious leader who's actually hiding the truth. The film was taking shots at dogma and blind faith, which was pretty bold for 1968. One detail that blew my mind when I learned about it, they had a real NASA consultant on set. They wanted the spaceship and astronaut stuff to feel legit, even though that's not really what the movie was about. And here's another cool tidbit. Those ape movement coaches I mentioned earlier, they actually studied hours of primate footage to create a whole ape culture guide for the actors. The film's reputation just kept growing over time. By the mid-70s, people were studying it in film schools. What started as this clever gimmick movie had become this serious piece of social commentary. Critics started writing about how it dealt with civil rights, nuclear war fears, and the whole question of what makes us human. You know what's really wild? The film was so ahead of its time that some of the controversial elements they tackled, like evolution versus creationism, scientific freedom, species preservation, are still hot topics today. That's probably why people keep coming back to it. Plus, those practical effects still hold up. Sometimes they look more convincing than modern CGI, if you ask me. The movie even changed how Hollywood saw science fiction. Before Planet of the Apes, sci-fi was mostly B-movie territory. After its success, studios started taking the genre seriously as a way to talk about big ideas. Without this film, we might not have gotten things like Silent Running or Soylent Green, other sci-fi films that weren't afraid to tackle serious issues. Planet of the Apes isn't just some old sci-fi movie gathering dust. It's like this blueprint that keeps inspiring new storytellers. You can see its DNA everywhere. Take District 9, different aliens, same powerful message about segregation and prejudice. Or look at how the recent Apes trilogy with Andy Serkis took the original's ideas about species equality and pushed them into new territory. But here's what really blows my mind, how relevant this movie still feels today. When Taylor sees those gorilla hunters shooting humans for sport, it hits different in a world where we're facing mass extinction of species. The apes' denial of their own history? That's straight up parallel to how we sometimes ignore climate change or try to rewrite our own past. The film's influence on special effects is legendary. You know why? Because it proved that makeup and practical effects could make audiences believe in something completely outlandish. Before CGI, this was the gold standard. Modern makeup artists still study John Chambers' work. Even today's motion capture performances, like Andy Serkis as Caesar, owe a huge debt to those original ape performances. The movie's famous lines keep popping up in our culture too. "Get your paws off me, you damn dirty ape!" Isn't just a quote, it's become shorthand for standing up against oppression. And that final scene? It's been referenced and parodied so many times, but it never loses its power. Every time I watch some poor soul discover the truth about their world, in any movie, I think of Taylor on that beach. What's really fascinating is how the film predicted some of our current debates. The way the apes reject evidence that doesn't fit their worldview sounds pretty familiar in our post-truth era. Their fear of human intelligence? That's not so different from our current anxieties about artificial intelligence. The questions this movie asks are more urgent now than ever. Who deserves rights? What happens when one species dominates another? How do we face uncomfortable truths about ourselves? As we grapple with everything from AI ethics to environmental destruction, Planet of the Apes feels less like science fiction and more like a warning. And that's the real genius of the film. It's not just about talking apes, it's about us, about how we treat those we consider different, about what we might become if we don't change our ways. Every new generation that watches it finds something that speaks to their time. So here's a question worth thinking about. When we watch Planet of the Apes today, are we seeing our past, our present, or our future? Maybe it's all three. And maybe that's why, over 50 years later, this story about a world where apes evolved from men still makes us think about what it really means to be human. If you found this deep dive into Planet of the Apes fascinating, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There are plenty more classic films with hidden depths to explore, and I'd love to share them with you. Until next time, stay curious, and remember, on this planet, every species has a story to tell.